All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So Jets training camp practice just wrapped up, and in this one, I wanted to really cover some of the latest news and notes surrounding this team. This week is going to be absolutely massive for this football team. First preseason game this weekend. We got joint practices with the Carolina Panthers. Some stuff I want to dive into there, but unfortunately, we didn't get that many updates surrounding today's practice. But we did get word that, according to Rich Cimini, a couple of injured players that got hurt this weekend did come back and were all playing with the first team, that being Jermaine Johnson, Quincy Williams, and of course Laken Tomlinson. But the unfortunate news is that Carl Lawson is still not practicing, dealing with the lower back tightness. Personally, I'm not trying to make that big of a deal out of it. It obviously came out this weekend, no practice yesterday, not practicing today. And again, because the Jets are playing Carolina in Carolina, they're going to be traveling I believe actually tonight to Carolina to get ready for the joint practices, because there is some like scheduled press conferences with Robert Saleh tomorrow, like in the morning around like 9-10 o'clock. So I think that's the plan there. So it might just be precautionary. Hey, if Lawson's back is still, not 100%, let's just sit him out. That way he is 100% for the joint practices. Now, before we dive into those practices, I quickly wanted to say that the Saints just signed running back Kareem Hunt like 5-10 minutes ago here. So, in other words, a veteran running back is now off the board. And, to be fair, the Jets didn't really it didn't seem like the Jets had much interest based off of this offseason. There was some interest or at least some rumored interest around the trade deadline once Breece Hall got hurt originally back in the season. There was some talk, hey, could the Jets maybe pursue a Kareem Hunt type of trade? Same with Dearness Johnson, both from the Cleveland Browns. They ended up going with James Robinson. That whole thing was just a disaster. They didn't use him and obviously did not get brought back. So it was just a strange situation to say the least. But in any case, Kareem Hunt is with the New Orleans Saints now officially. And we're looking at the running back market. Dalvin Cook currently, I believe, is training down in Florida. Zeke Elliott did visit with the New England Patriots, and I did see a report, I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago, suggesting that the Patriots could maybe be working on something there, bringing Elliott into the mix, which then would leave, because I would assume the Patriots are now out on a running back. The Saints are now out on a running back. Now it's like, all right, for Dalvin Cook, it's probably between the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins here. But Buffalo seems really, really unlikely at this point, considering his brother, is their starting running back, James Cook. So I think right now it's probably going to come down between the Jets and the Dolphins. If I am the Jets, though, and I'm looking at the running back room and, I'm assuming the Jets want another veteran running back. You don't want to be in a position to where all these vets come off the board. Now, all of a sudden, Dalvin Cook is kind of holding out, and his price tag continues to bump up because him and his camp can now say, who else are you going to go sign? Kareem Hunt's gone. Zeke Elliott's gone. Leonard Fournette, yes, of course, is still out there, and you could always make a trade, but you do run that risk of Cook potentially wanting more money. But then on the other hand, you can say, well, if Breece Hall is expected to come back fully ready to go by week 1 and the Jets are actually holding him back in practice because he feels like he wants to do more, but the Jets are just being safe about it, then it's like, all right, you know what? Let's just use the money and delegate it to the offensive line, delegate it to different positions here. Or in the event that somebody gets hurt later on, the Jets want to acquire a big name talent at the trade deadline. We just have more leash to, make something happen at that point in time. So, I think the good news, whatever the Jets decide to do, it will be it'll be in favor of the team. So we bring a running back in, we sign an offensive lineman, we bring in another safe, whatever the case may be. The Jets are getting better. That's the silver lining here. Now, shifting gears and looking at these joint practices, right? I think they are absolutely massive. They're, in fact, you can make an argument, they're actually maybe a little bit more important than the preseason game itself. Why? Because we're going to have starters versus starters. It's not a situation where, Aaron Rodgers is going to be holding out. They're holding him out because they don't want him to get hurt. Or Bryce Young, right? If we flip it and look at Carolina's side, the reason why these practices are a thing is to compete against different players, compete against different schemes, right? Different skill sets. You're finally not being able to, or you're not expected to beat up on your own guys. So it will be starters versus starters here. And for me personally, I am totally looking forward to it. We look at the Carolina Panthers as, a young rebuilding team, but man, they have some talent. They are deep at specific positions. Obviously, Bryce Young is kind of the big storyline with Carolina, and rightfully so, number 1 overall pick, quarterback, but they have new head coach Frank Reich coming in the building. They're changing things up, but the matchups that I am, I cannot wait for. The Carolina Panthers defensive, and I'm talking about in practice, so starters versus starters here. The Carolina Panthers defensive line versus the Jets offensive line. We have heard tons of reports really since training camp started that the Jets offensive line has been the weak point, right? Run plays have been getting blown up. There's been multiple sacks every day. We're seeing Bryce Huff have great days. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald is shining. Quinn Williams is doing his thing. That's to be expected. But really, from top to bottom, Carl Lawson has been so far having a pretty good practice getting after quarterbacks. We've heard reports that Becton has been up and down. We've heard reports that Billy Turner has been up and down. Dwayne Brown is still not practicing. Will Laken Tomlinson get better from last season? This week is going to be huge. We take a look at the Carolina Panthers defensive line depth chart as of right now. I mean, they are loaded. They got Brian Burns rushing the passer. They got Derek Brown on the inside. Former Saint Shai Tuttle is a player that I'm a really big fan of. I think he's pretty underrated in this day and age. So, I think it's going to be a massive test if we are, getting reports throughout the week that the Jets offensive line is looking like a wall protecting Aaron Rodgers, going up against Burns, going up against Derek Brown. That is going to be flat out awesome, right? But conversely, if the Jets offensive line is getting just eviscerated in practice, then they go down to Carolina and they're getting ripped apart there, it's like, okay, we might need to do some reassessing moving forward. Rich Cimini reported the other day that Dwayne Brown is still 2 weeks away from practicing. That's a long time. We're talking about after the Bucks game. So we're looking at like the 1 week against the New York Giants and then that preseason 4th week. Now, granted, Dwayne Brown is a veteran, so it's not it's not the end of the world. I do feel like the onboarding process for him will be a little bit easier than, say a rookie or something like that. But, this week is huge. It is huge. Joe Tippmann is another player to watch. Connor McGovern. How are these guys looking? I have 100% confidence in AVT. He's going to do his thing. And also, too, with McGovern, to a certain degree, I feel solid about those two guys. But Laken, I really need him. We all really need him to look better than last season, especially with what he's getting paid. And then tackles. Will there be somebody that emerges? Will there be somebody that, has a solid 2 days of practice, just doing his job, looking like a pro, looking like a definite starter out there against this talented Panthers defensive line? That, for me, is the biggest thing that I'm looking at. And also, the Jets are, defensively speaking, they run their style. They have their scheme in place. Carolina, on the other hand, it's different. It is a lot different than what the Jets present. So how will Aaron Rodgers, how will Zach Wilson and these guys perform against a completely different style of defense with young, talented playmakers all over the place? Okay, because yes, Carolina didn't win the Super Bowl last season. Yes, they ended up firing Matt Rule, but I mean, a lot of people are talking about the Panthers as a potential sleeper team. I don't want to go as far as to say, oh yeah, they're a 10-win squad, 11-win squad or anything. But I do think they're not going to be, horrendous or anything like that. If we think back, the Bears had the first overall pick. Carolina was picking 8, 9, somewhere in that range. I think it was 9. They traded up for Young, so they're further along than other teams picking first overall for sure. 100%. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I cannot wait for tomorrow. I cannot wait for these practices. We got Hard Knocks tonight. I'm going to be doing a recap afterwards, so that should be really fun. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.